Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. How awesome to see you. Now, I'm getting messages from YouTube asking me to share my screen with my audience. Can you all see me? I think you can all see me. Hello, Joel. Hello, everyone. Jeff Plan, what a joy to have you joining us for today. Bit difficult to taste the wine if you are driving, but that's okay. Good, excellent. I am in a mystery location today, which is not so mysterious. I'm at Peter and Nina's house. The interesting, well, not so interesting, the tricky thing is going to be is that Peter's on his way back from Moorooduc now. So he's going, and I've got his keys. So I'm going to have to leap up and let him in when he gets to the house. So that'll be good good television for everyone. So we should probably get on with getting some wine in our glasses so that you've at least got something to drink waiting for me to come back to the computer. How is everyone? Have you managed to stay warm and dry today? Nareem, literally just sat down after returning after 4 days in Coonawarra. Well, it sounds like you probably need a little bit of Mornington Peninsula Pinot Noir then. I've got my little drinks with Kate hoodie on to keep me warm. It's ridiculous for this time of year for it to be this windy and cold, but we shall persevere. I've got a Pinot glass. I have some Pinot Noir. Now, I don't have the sexy front label that I made for you guys. I've just got the blank front and the back label to tell me what it is. Hello, Cotty and John. How you going? Love your work. Bought some beef pies tonight. Excellent. Alison and Andrew. Hello, hello. Lovely to have you join us. So we've got all the old gang together, and yeah, we'll get started. Let's get this bottle open. That's the sound we want to hear. I've been out selling wine today with our distributor, Ian. He's a good boy. He took me to some good places. We went to Katerina's for lunch. Katerina has been buying Pinot Noir, I think, from the very early days. Anyway, she's been a fantastic supporter of Moorooduc. And if you don't know Katerina's restaurant in Melbourne, it's only open at lunchtime. It's kind of in the business quarter. Hello, Sue and Daryl. Lovely to see you. And the food's fantastic. We had a lovely bowl of pasta, which was delicious, and the vitello tomato is to die for. So highly, highly recommend. Hello, Peter and Karen and Sonia. Lovely to see you. Glad you could make it. So what are we doing tonight with this very young Pinot Noir? 2022 Pinot Noir is a vintage that we are not going to be opening. We're not going to be releasing for. Yeah, we love Katerina, both the venue and the lady. I agree, Nareem. It's a very cool place and a very lovely person. There we go. I knew you guys would know who I was talking about. Very classy. 22 Pinot. This wine has been in bottle for about 6 months, I think, give or take, and we usually hold our Pinots back for a couple of years before we release them. And we've just released in Cellar Door, we released with you guys last week, the 2020 Estate Pinot Noir. And in Cellar Door, we've released it just today, I think, possibly yesterday. So the 2020 Pinot Noir is current release. We don't have huge amounts of it. So it's going to come and go fairly quickly, I'd say. I think we'll be lucky if we've got 6 months worth of supply for the 2020 that we all enjoyed so much last week. But we thought, Jeremy and I were talking about interesting things to do with you guys, keep you interested, keep you involved. And one of the things that we talk about a lot at the winery and that we thought would be fun to share with you is the characters of really young wine and why we age it in bottle for a couple of years before we release it. It's not that we don't think the wine is good enough to drink now, but we just think it will be better in a year or so's time. So let's have a taste. Has everyone got some in their glass? I think And I think also that it's one of those things that most people on the Mornington Peninsula and Pinot producers around Victoria are selling their 21 or 22 estate wines now. So it's a bit of a strange thing for a lot of people that we hold ours back and that we're only selling 2020 at the moment. It's a little luxury that we have, but I thought let's have a look at this and see what we think. So first thing I notice is that it's got the most gorgeous colour. It's really bright. 2022 was a really difficult year. It's really kind of ruby purple, isn't it? It's rather wonderful. It looks super young. No, Nareem. So Nareem's asking if the rest of the batch is still in barrel. No, we've bottled all of this wine a few months ago, so it will be. But most of it has a front label on it, and it's all just in storage in the cellar, just doing its thing in bottle for a year or so until we're ready to release it. We'll be getting some more labels for these bottles that missed out. We just every now and again have a little bit of trouble counting how many bottles we have and how many labels we need, and I'm not quite sure how we managed to do it, but nobody's perfect. So this wine, thank you, Peter and Karen. Peter and Karen have said holding back your wine is one of the things we love about Moorooduc. Craig is saying it's seriously powerful, very intense, and this is one of the things. Yeah, Joel, it does have much more nose than last week. And this is one of the reasons that I suggested that you had something nice and proteiny, maybe with a little bit of fat, or a really good steak that's going to have that kind of nice, firm texture and flavour to it to handle the richness and fullness of this wine. It's smelling, for me, it smells really young. And what do I mean by that? It's got very strong aromatics, as Joel's saying, much more nose than last week. But the nose is it's like you've just kind of picked some cherries and some plums and you've taken a bite out of it, and you've just got that kind of crunchy, tannic flavour of the plum skin and the juiciness of the cherries, with a little bit of time in bottle. That kind of grippy, bitter smell that is the smell of the plum skins will soften out, and some more earthy, and it's very fruity. You don't get a lot of spice or earthiness on the wine. It's just all about that sort of really bright, crunchy red fruit. It's it's a little bit more one-dimensional than the wine that we had last week. It's really lovely, but it seems like, for me, it's a bit like an awkward teenager. It's got its elbows and its knees kind of sticking out, and it's a bit gangly. It hasn't kind of worked out how to make all of everything's kind of work together. What questions? Jeff has asked, is bottling a result of tasting rather than longer in barrel? I'm not quite sure what you're asking, Jeff or Sue. To answer that question, I think I can answer it. With red wine production, the longer you leave the wine in barrel, the more the primary fruit characters will soften and change into tertiary fruit characters. Because when the wine is in the barrel, even when you've got it filled right up to the top, it's got very slow oxidation happening to it. So that will change the colour. The colour will get paler and more garnet, and it will make that really bright fruit soften out. But it will also make the tannins polymerize. And what that means is that the little tannins sort of start sticking together because they want to become bigger tannins. And when they get too big, they get too heavy and they fall out of solution. So if that happens while the wine's in the bottle, that's when you get sediment in old red wine. If it happens in the barrel, then obviously there's no sediment in the bottle because the tannins have fallen out of the wine before you've got it ready for bottling. When tannins polymerize and fall out of the wine, it makes the wine softer and it makes the tannins more velvety. So having some time in barrel is important. But if you have too much time in barrel, you lose too much of the brightness and the wine develops too fast, and you end up with something that's kind of a bit tired looking before it even starts aging in the bottle. Once the wine is in the bottle, then you get no oxygen ingress, so a more anaerobic aging process in the bottle, and the colour stays brighter in the wine for much longer, and the wine evolves more slowly in the bottle, and it evolves in a different way. So it does soften out, but it holds its fruit, and it does become more velvety in its texture, but you don't get as much color change, and you don't get that browning as much as quickly, and the wine will change more in the bottle over the years than it would if you've left it in barrel for longer. So really traditional wines like an old-fashioned Barolo or a Brunello, some of those old-fashioned Italian wines and some old-fashioned Bordeaux's, Cabernet wines, were sometimes left in barrel for maybe 2 years or longer, and you'd get all this evolution happening in the barrel before it went into the bottle. So the wine had evolved, but then because it evolved so much in the barrel, there was nowhere else for it to go in the bottle, so it just went into stasis in the bottle. So if you get a really old Barolo from the 1960s, for example, it's made in that old-fashioned way, the wine will be brown or very pale in colour, and it won't have any fruit, but it'll have these really intriguing sort of tea leaf, dried rose petal, tarry kind of characters. But it'll be more familiar to what you expect from maybe an Italian balsamic vinegar than what you'd expect from a modern red wine. And so these wines are a little bit challenging. If you put them with the right food, they can still be quite delicious, but they're not like the wines that we make these days. So the shorter time the wine spends in barrel, the more of the fruit and the more of the redness, purpleness of the colour we hold in the wine for bottling. We find that our Pinot needs about just under 12 months in barrel. So we pick the fruit, we ferment the wine, we put it in barrel. And then for the Estate Pinot Noir, if we're getting it ready for bottling just as the next vintage is coming in, then we've got barrels that are ready to have new wine put in them. And that wine has had, it's sort of 10 months in barrel. It's done all the things that we want it to do in barrel. It's breathed. It's gone through its malolactic conversion. It's had time to settle. And it's still fresh and bright and fruity. And then we put it in bottle, and that kind of shocks the wine for a little while, which is why we left this wine for sort of 6 months before we showed it to you. But then it makes it kind of stop and sit, and you get these esters, you get these fruit esters coming off the wine, which we saw in the wine when it was still in barrel, and it keeps it really, it makes the wine kind of a bit hard, but quite fruity and quite floral in character. So the tannin will be very firm, but the aromatics and the lift and the flavours will be very fresh. I hope that sort of answered your question, Jeff and Sue. Cotty has asked, do you hold the wine at the same temperature while maturing as when it's been released? Pretty much. We've got our winery cellar, and we've got, if we're keeping the wine off site, we've got a warehouse that is gently temperature controlled, so the wine's kept in a good temperature while it's maturing. It's not like someone's lovely dark cellar under their stairs. It's a bit more industrial than that, but it's a good sort of constant temperature, and the wine and also young wine is a bit more robust generally than old wine. So that early bottle aging, we want the wine to start evolving. We want it to sort of settle down and sort of chill out in the bottle for a little while before it's ready to drink. Craig, what are the markers of a future good wine are you looking for in a young wine? It's a really hard question to answer, Craig, because I still find barrel tasting and tasting young wine quite difficult. But this wine, I haven't tasted it yet. Shall I put something in my mouth before I keep talking? Hang on. You can taste it, Joel. See, Joel's polite because he's only just joined us. The rest of you have probably drunk about half the bottle already, haven't you? So, Craig, I think that, well, let's use this wine as an example of, because I think this is a delicious wine. I just think I would like to drink it more in a year's time than right now. So what are we looking at? Well, first of all, when a wine is a bit too young to drink, it smells better than it tastes. And I think the aromatics on this wine are terrific, even though they're a little bit straightforward at the moment. It's got really good intensity of fruit, and you get that beautiful cherry, you get that red plum skin character, you get a terrific, someone's here. Hello, Tallulah Bell. Peter managed to get in without me having to buzz him in. How fantastic. You get, hello, Pete. So you get, hello, Tallulah. I'm on television. I can't talk to you. 95% going for the second bottle. Yeah, exactly, Fiona. So you get all that lovely fruit on the nose, and you get those lovely florals, and you get lots of yummy kind of primary fruit perfume, and that's a sign that we're looking at a good Pinot Noir. Hello, you're not going to see any mushroomy, truffly characters. You don't see that nice kind of perfumed sort of cedarwood. Sandalwood kind of characters that we see in these wines when they're a little bit older. You don't see the spice and the herbs coming through quite yet on the nose, but you do see a little bit of that on the palate. So when you put it in your mouth at this stage, it's still, don't get me wrong, I think it's delicious. I just think for my taste and for our sort of, and I had this conversation with Jane Faulkner, the wine reviewer, as well. Pete's just preparing us some sausages now, so any background noise, just ignore it. Or some chips. I think he's getting me some chips to crunch on. He's a good host. Jane Faulkner and I were having this conversation, and she said, "Oh, it's such a shame that you haven't released your." Joel says, "Hi, Pete."
Hi, Joel.
Do you want to stick your head in and say hi?
No.
Come on, come and stick your head in and say hi.
No, I gotta get the sausages on.
He's got to cook me some sausages, but he brought me a chip. That was nice.
Have some wine.
Have some wine. So just to finish my answer to your question, Craig, because I seem to be even scattier than usual today. That firm acid and tannin structure that I think is a little overwhelming at the moment is a really good sign that this wine's going to age well. You still get that lovely long fruit flavour, but the tannin and the acid are quite forward and quite assertive at the moment in the wine. So it needs some food. So Fiona is saying that she's spoken to some sommeliers that like to roughly aerate young Pinots. I think, okay, oh no. Kay, if you do want to get the box to catch up, if you're feeling dreadfully FOMO-y, we can still put that box together for you. So don't. I know there's a lot of Moorooduc Estate wine around. We're encouraging you to move through it fairly quickly. What flavour sausages have you got? Pete Noreen wants to know because they might pop over.
Oh, they're Joe's chipolata spicy sausages.
Joe's chipolata spicy sausages.
But they're not that spicy.
Not that spicy though. just the right amount of spicy?
No, they could be spicier, I reckon.
They could be spicier? Okay, cool. I think they'll be good, Nareem, but you don't know where we are. Ha ha!
Joe's formerly Jonathan's.
Joe's as in Jonathan's of Collingwood. So we love their sausages. I think they're some of the best sausages in Melbourne. And we are actually talking about, Asha, look at me jumping around. We're talking about doing a couple of little events in over the summer holidays. So you should keep an eye out for the Moorooduc newsletter, because we might be having a sausage sizzle on Moorooduc, possibly with some music to accompany it. Hello, Nina. Everyone's coming home. We have wine.
Great.
Okay. So, Fiona, I haven't answered your question yet. Some sommeliers like to roughly aerate young Pinots. So, if you have a Pinot Noir that is too young or is a little bit younger than you'd like it to be, the best way to get it opening up quicker is to give it a pretty strong aeration. And so when I get my decanter, and if you've got a decanter and you want to kind of chuck the rest of it, the wine, if you've got any left, chuck it into your decanter quite roughly. That's about as much of a rough aeration that a young Pinot needs. It will open the wine up a little bit, but doing this with the glass will also do the same thing, just a bit more slowly. So it depends how much patience you have. It depends if you're like desperate for the wine to be open, or whether you want to go on the journey of seeing how it evolves and opens in the glass. And I personally prefer the second option. If it starts off looking a bit harsh and a little bit elbowy, and then you get air into it and it looks better, then you get this kind of this experience of how the wine is becoming a better version of itself. Whereas if you chucked it in a decanter, then you miss the beginning of that story. So that's my thought on that. Craig is also asking on the flip side, what's a red flag that says drink now? Well, usually the nose will smell quite dusty and might smell a bit flat. The wine will probably have developed some browner colour, and it might also the wine will have a gentle perfume to it and have a gentle flavour to it, but it won't be big and boisterous like this anymore. It'll be smoother and more savoury, and it's really hard to know, Craig, because all wines have a different lifespan. If the wine opens up and it looks best as soon as you've opened it up, and then it starts kind of tasting less delicious almost immediately, then you know that it's right at the end of its life. There are a lot of wines that you will see, you open it up, it smells a bit weird and kind of fusty and musty, dusty, fusty, musty. And then you give it a swirl, and then these lovely aromas, tertiary aromas come up. So dried petals, dried fruit, earth, mushroom. Well, I'm talking about Pinot Noir at the moment. Earth, mushroom, sort of forest floor flavours, maybe some meaty characters, a little bit of kind of, salami kind of notes, that kind of thing. They'll all come up, and then maybe after 15 minutes, maybe after 20 minutes, maybe after half an hour, it'll be, oh, nice, thanks, Patty. It'll be kind of just going flat, and all those aromas will kind of fade away. And then that's when, if you've got a few bottles of a wine and you open a wine that does that over sort of a half hour to an hour period over drinking it, and it gets less good rather than getting better over that time, then that means that wine hasn't got anywhere further to go and that you should drink it up quick. So I hope that helps. The problem is that for you to analyse that, then you need to open the bottle and pour it into the glass. So until you do that, then it's very hard to tell, unless you've got wine that you've seen a wine under cork and it's leaked, or the corks are pushed or whatever. That's a red flag that you shouldn't be holding onto that wine anymore, because it's probably got heat. It's heated up and expanded, and then that will affect the flavour of the wine. And usually wine that's got heat affected is going to get worse rather than better with time. So, yes, they're bespoke sausages, Peter and Karen. Hannah and Jack are here. Hurrah! Lovely. The tannin, it's got a real, and it does, the spice character is quite peppery. Now, I was just trying to remember the 2022 vintage, and I texted Jeremy before and he wrote back, and then I found a tasting note that he wrote. And it was pretty difficult vintage 2022. We had a lot of, this windy, kind of rainy, cold, horrible weather that we've been having on and off over the last couple of weeks. That's the kind of weather that we had at the beginning of the growing season in 2022. The vines got really kind of bashed around by the weather, and it continued on through the time while they were trying to flower and set fruit. So we got quite small crops. What else does he say? In summer we had once the vines had kind of dealt with all this weather while they were trying to actually make baby grapes. Once that had all that damage had been done, then the weather settled down. But we didn't really have. It was quite a mild summer, so it was kind of a slow ripening character. We had a prevalence of small berries. So I am just checking my notes because it's a lot of information about this. But because of the weather, we had a prevalence of really small berries that hadn't been properly fertilized. So the flavors in those develop faster, and you get a lot more skin to juice ratio. So these wines always risked being a little bit excessively structured, excessively tannic. And I think that we kind of countered that by being a little bit more gentle in our winemaking and not necessarily working the skins with the juice quite as hard as we would in a normal year. I think the wine has turned out really, really well. And they're wines of sort of balance and finesse, I think, is a really good way of describing them. This wine, for me, it's just, as it's opening up, it's just that fruit those fruit esters are just getting a little bit less harsh and kind of smoothing out. I'm getting a little more floral. I'm getting a little bit more rose petal and violet coming up off the nose. Getting a bit of barbecue smell. Oh, no, that's from outside. I've terrified the cat here. Apparently there's a cat that lives here, but I've never seen him. So I don't know if he's just a figment of Peter and Nina's imagination. But I think this wine's opening up really, really nicely. And even some nice Pete's brought some Boulder Canyon avocado oil classic sea salt kettle style potato chips, which are rather delicious. And I'm sure if they're cooked in avocado oil, they must be good for me, right? And just that little bit of fatty potato works really well with the tannin and the acid in this wine. Nareem, not as much white pepper on the nose I'd expect from a cooler, wet year. Will that come with another year in bottle? I'm not sure, Nareem. I think because it was a cooler year and there was a bit of wet weather, and we did a lot of work in the vineyard, leaf plucking and opening up the canopy to get aeration in there so that we got good ripeness. And because the crops were so small that even though it was a cool year, we did get pretty good ripeness. So I don't think, 2020 was a good example of a wine that did have that white and black pepper kind of spectrum in its spice. I think this wine is going to be a slightly less herbal, slightly more boisterously fruity wine, even in a year and a half's time. It's got that extra weight that comes from all of those little skins, little berries, lots of skin to juice ratio. But Nareem, you never know. The pepper may come forward a little bit more in a year's time. It's really, it's usually you'll see it fairly early on. And that's the trick with sort of trying to decide, what wine's going to look like and how it's kind of evolving. Oh, Joel's getting gooseberry now. That's very exotic of you, Joel. I think it's really interesting. And I think this is one of the cool things about this group, because people, when you go and do a wine course and they say, gooseberry, that's what Sauvignon Blanc smells like. And I'm like, yeah, you do get gooseberry and Sauvignon Blanc, but you do often get things like gooseberry, which is kind of a green, juicy, crunchy kind of a smell, taste, everlasting gobstopper, exactly. And you do get that in a wine like this because it's really juicy. It's got a kind of crunchy red fruit kind of a character to it. But it's also got almost like an elderflower blossomy character coming on. Did we do a Robbo and a Duck Pinot Noir in 22? We sure did, Craig. I haven't tasted them recently, but we will be releasing them next June, as is our want. King's birthday next year, the 22s will be released. That's terrifying. And they'll be too young then. And this is my ongoing pain. We know that these wines look better with a number of years in the cellar. Even the estate wine. If you bought this estate wine when we release it in a year and a half's time, I'm saying a year and a half, we'll release it when we've sold all of the 20 and all of the 2021. So it might be in a year, it might be in a year and a half. I don't think it'll be longer than that because we're sort of racing through the Pinots at the moment. But if you bought a case of this as soon as we released it and then put it in a good cellar, if you have a good cellar, for 5 to 8 years, I think you would be very much rewarded by doing that. But I am very aware of the fact that a lot of us don't have good cellars, myself included. I have a little corner in Richard's good cellar, so I'm very lucky, but I don't have a good cellar at home. I've got a void under the house, which is okay, but it's not a great place to keep special wine. And most of us drink wine young. So back to Fiona's question about how to deal with a young Pinot, yes, give it lots of air while you're drinking it, either by keeping a small amount in the glass while you're drinking it, swirling it a lot, drinking it slowly, or sticking it quickly in a decanter before you start drinking it to get it going. I do think the red cherry is coming forward now with more air. Joel, you do ask all the good questions. So Craig, we will talk Robbo and Duck Pinot probably in about 6 months' time. Sorry, Alison, did I miss a question? What makes a good cellar? So a perfect cellar is dark. It's got a little bit of humidity because you don't want it to be too dry. This is old-fashioned because this is when people used to have wine with corks in them. So if you still buy European wine or the occasional Australian wine that is sealed with a cork, this is what you need. And then I'll tell you in a moment what you need for wine under screw cap. Cool. But it doesn't need to be, so a lot of people go, it must be 12 degrees. The most important thing is that it's cool but a constant temperature all year round. So if you're able to have a cellar that maintains, if you've got a cellar that maintains a temperature of, say, 16 degrees every day of the year, that's going to be better than a cellar that goes down to 8 degrees in winter and goes up to 14 degrees in summer. Richard McIntyre, what is your address? I'm a wine robber. Thank you, Richard. Welcome to the chat. You'll never get into the mystery void under my house, Richard. It's very carefully guarded by a dragon. So temperature should be, so Alison, if your basement is 16 degrees all year round, that's perfect. It'd be even better if it was 12 degrees all year round, but 16 degrees is pretty good. If it vacillates in summer and winter, then that's less good. And it's not a disaster. It just means that your wine won't last for as long. The humidity in a cellar is important if you've got corks. If you don't have corks, then it doesn't need to be humid. It can be dry. So that's not a problem. If all of your wine that you've got in your cellar is under screw cap, then you're fine. It needs to be dark because wine doesn't really like sitting around in bright lights. And it needs to, one of the most important things is no vibrations. So good work, Alison. If you've got one of those thermometers, they're really good. You can buy them at Bunnings that tells you what the top temperature and the bottom temperature that your room gets to over a period of time. You can put that in your basement and that'll tell you you probably want to put it in there over summer because it's summer usually that places warm up in this country rather than it being a problem in winter. So yes, vibrations are the biggest problem. So you'll often see, when you see pictures of old-fashioned cellars, they'll have like little pebbles or gravel on the ground and then the wine racks on top of the gravel. And that's because they might be in an area where sometimes there might be little earthquakes and the gravel stops the earth from moving the wines too much. So you get less vibration, like I'm getting vibration while I'm wiggling the table and my computer. Oh my goodness, lots of good questions. The worst place in the world to keep your wine is in the fridge. And I'm talking about your commercial food fridge, not your wine fridge. If you've got a wine fridge, then it's fine. But a food fridge, the light turns on when you open the door. Usually people keep their wine in the door of the fridge, so it rattles around every time, and the fridge turns on and off, and there's a lot of vibrations. It's just not a great place to keep wine. So put your wine in the fridge before you want to drink it to get it cold, but don't leave it in there for weeks and weeks on end because you'll often lose a little bit of the nuance of the flavour, particularly champagne. Okay. Nareem, Moorooduc en Primeur release purchase system is coming for those with a good cellar. No. So Nareem, we've always, so really, in my mind, when we release our single vineyard wines, they're okay to look. They're lovely to drink when they're young. I think they'll be even better if you put them in your cellar for 5 to 8 years. If you don't have a good cellar, then one of the perks of being in the wine club, and we will get better at offering these things to you, but some of, not all, and we're working on getting them onto the back end of the website, but if you're in the wine club properly and we've got you in properly and you log into your account, you can go into an area which makes, in fact, the shop itself brings up at the bottom of it some museum wines that you as wine club members are able to buy and drink that we've aged for you. So that's how we get around that whole kind of, we think that our wines taste better with some age, but we sell them to you young and you have to age them yourself. If you can't age them yourself in the wine, if you're in the wine club, you can access some back vintage wines from us. And when you come to lunches, obviously, and tastings and things like that, then you also have access to some back vintage wines. We'll get better at offering them to you. So you don't have to like go, please, Kate, can we buy some of this old wine? We'll just have it on the website for the Drinks with Kate and wine club people to be able to access. We are working on it. We're just about finalised our style guide, which is very exciting. And the next phase is to get the new website going. So don't hold your breaths because you might go blue in the face, but we are getting there slowly. More questions. Fiona Inchley, wax sealed cork versus just cork. Wax sealed cork, in my opinion, is pretty much just extra dressing, bit of makeup. Makes it look fancy. I don't think sealing a bottle with cork and then with wax really does any better job than sealing it with a cork. So they look pretty, but that's probably about it. Peter and Kana, if it's easier to recycle clear glass, is there an issue with wine bottles being made of light proof coloured glass? Yep. It would be better if all of the glass bottles that we use in the world were the same colour. They could all be this bottle green, but I don't think people who make Coca-Cola and soft drink and fruit juice and mineral water would like to sell their wine in bottle green. So yeah, if for recycling, Peter and Karen, it's not that it's easier to recycle clear glass than any other glass, but if it's all the same colour, then it's much easier to recycle. Jackie, your older Moorooduc Estate Chardonnay is in the fridge, so not so good. Not so good, correct. Keep it in a wine rack, in a cool place, and put it in the fridge a few hours before you want to drink it, ideally. Joel, if you have champagne white already in the fridge, is it better to leave those or take them out and store? Take them out and store them, Joel. If they've been in the fridge for a few years, probably drink them, because then they're going to be damaged already, and they're not going to recover. But they're not going to make you sick. They're not going to have turned into vinegar. You'll just have lost some of the nuance of the aroma and flavour. So yeah, if you're storing them in the fridge and they've only been in there for a little while, take them out. Otherwise, just drink them and don't do it again. Craig, I have a temperature alarm on my cellar, though Karen hears it and thinks she needs to drink a couple of bottles. Excellent. That's fantastic. Good work, Karen. I think that. Thank you, Peter. Peter's brought me some sausages. I'm being very well looked after here. I hope you, Jill and Richard, are watching, because I've been brought chips. Been brought. Look at this. This is beautiful. I'm going to try and show this to you without throwing it all over the computer. Look at that. Sausages with tomato sauce in a beautiful little pot with a beautiful little spoon. I'm not going to eat them yet because apparently they're hot, so I'm going to let them cool down a little bit. What psychopath has sparkling in the fridge and doesn't drink it? Exactly, Fiona. Come on, Joel, get on with it. Yes, thank you, Jeremy. Wax looks good. Doesn't do anything else besides looking good. Does look pretty. If it's proper wax, it's an absolute bastard to get off the bottle before you pull the cork out. Fridge, yes, so the fridge also can be rather dry. So particularly when we're talking about champagne and sparkling wine under cork, or wine that's under Diam or natural cork, the cork can be damaged if it's been a long time in the yes, thank you, Craig, an absolute vegan dream. My spicy sausages and chippies. So yes, Jeremy, thank you for getting us back on course. Fridges are actually designed to sort of dry things out, so the cork can be damaged much more quickly in a fridge than it can be even in just normal environment. So yeah, and when the cork gets damaged, it'll tend to be less elastic, it'll shrink a little bit, and then air can get in, wine can get out. For sparkling wine, carbon dioxide, i.e. the bubbles in the sparkling wine, can get out, so then you've got flat wine that's starting to oxidise if the cork's not doing its job properly. So that's the problem with fridges. Also, the rattling tends to bruise the flavours of the wine. All right, team. Woo. That's fair. I've been talking a lot. You guys have been asking lots of good questions tonight. What do you think of the wine? Are you happy that we're keeping it for another little while? I think it does need to soften out a little bit. I think it's nice and crunchy. It's got really lovely tannin and acid. It's probably much better with food than it is on its own, if you're all kind of matching it to your foods. Fiona, yum, it's good. We're keeping it. It's good we're keeping it because it's hard to resist. Yeah, absolutely. So we will keep it for you. We've got to get through all of the 2020 Pinot Noir and then the 2021 Pinot Noir. So I think that will be interesting. I'm just trying to, while I'm talking to you, look up what's next. Who can tell me? Faye, can you tell me what's next? I'm sure someone can tell me what's next before I get around to looking it up. But I'm just, hi, Moorooduc Estate. Pete, have some more wine.
That's for Nina.
Nina, have some more wine. It slips at Pinot Gris Estate 2021. Thank you, Fiona. That's exciting as well. I just wrote the official tasting note for that wine yesterday, It's looking delicious. It's a new release again. We've got lots of new releases at the moment. It's very exciting. I knew what you meant, Fiona. I like Pinot Grist. We could call it grist to the mill if we wanted to be ridiculous. It sounds like the sort of thing my father would say. That's why I said ridiculous. Hi, Dad. Yeah, Pinot Gris 2021. It's delicious. It's it's quite different from the 2019. We didn't make the Estate Pinot Gris in 2020, which is why we've skipped the vintage. You had the 2020 Devil Bean Creek Pinot Gris a few weeks ago now, a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks. I think we started with it. Anyway, this will be fun. I will have a little think about what we should be eating with it. Do you know what? Jeremy and I agreed yesterday when we were tasting it that something that would be really delicious with the 2021 Pinot Gris Estate is a really lovely silky slice of mortadella. Mortadella? Was that? No, that's cheese, isn't it? Mortadella's the sausage, the pink. Yeah. So mortadella, I think. So we're thinking charcuterie. We could do some cheese. Mozzarella's the cheese. I'm sure there's another cheese that sounds like mortadella. I get very confused with all these Italian cheeses and meat products. But I'm thinking Italian cheeses and meat products could do pretty well with this Pinot Gris Estate. I'll have a think and see if I can think of anything else a little bit more creative. But I'm going to go and drink my Pinot Noir and eat one of these sausages. I didn't think I wanted to burn my mouth on camera. So hang on a sec. Let me just taste a little bit of sausage with just the right amount of hot. Oh my God, that's delicious, Pete. Oh my God. So another trick for young wine. Taleggio is delicious, Jackie, and it would be delicious with that wine. It wasn't what I was thinking of, but it's a good thought. Oh, you off? Oh, Cotty, off to Japan. Have fun. Craig, have fun in the Granite Belt. Crab linguine could be pretty good, Fiona. Let me do some research, and I'll come back to you with something awesome. Reaper Chillin' Challenge next week. No, Joel, absolutely not. You can do it at home and report back next week. I've got to say, really young Pinot is excellent with kind of slightly fatty, spicy, salty protein. So those little sausages are fantastic. If you're having sausages for dinner with the rest of the wine, you're on a winner. I hope your food and wine matches were good. I'm glad you enjoyed the wine. We'll come back and taste it again in about a year's time and see how it's evolved. So I hope you wrote some notes and you'll be able to remember to come back to it then. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful week. Enjoy your holidays, travels, staying at home, working, whatever it is that you're doing. Have fun doing it, and I'll see you again next week. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Peter and Nina, for letting us use your house. Woo.